Chapter 10, No Heart. Abooksigun laid down for the night, and the darkness covered him. He sees himself in front of a table and hears a voice, "Sit." On the table were pieces of a doll scattered everywhere. The voice said, "What's missing?" Abooksigun assembled the doll-like puzzle, a brainstalking and tedious task that seemed to last for hours. Talking to himself, looking for missing pieces scattered over the table. Respiratory system, digestive, nervous. When he came to the circulatory system, Abooksigun got confused because all the parts were used. The voice came to him. "What's missing?" Abooksigun said to himself, "Where's the heart?" He shouted, "It's the heart. The heart is missing." Abooksigun wakes and stares at the ceiling. Dung looks at Abooksigun, "What's wrong?" Abooksigun stared into space. "I have helped all, but I'm missing my heart, my people. My heart is with my people. Let's go to the docks and see my kin." Dung shook his head. "Now?" Abooksigun and Dung headed to the basement and looked at the infrastructure maps. He saw the tunnels and shortcuts laid out by Abenian leading to the docks. "Let's go," Dung said, "right behind you." Boo Boo tried to follow, but Abooksigun said, "This time, boy, you can't go. People will be afraid of you where we are going." Dung looked at Abooksigun. "Are you serious?" "They have been afraid of him everywhere he has gone." Abooksigun smiled. "Well, this is an undercover mission." They followed the map just south of the train station, opposite the ghetto, where dim lights were spread every 50 feet in an old subway station. Dung said, "This old system needs repairs and a complete inspection." Abooksigun agreed and called the Dirty 30, and they worked on the system all night. Before daybreak, they headed northeast with all his men and to Manorville, New York, labeled "The Quarters" on the map. They exit the subway system near the Peconic River along Mill Road. Abooksigun put on a burlap sack, and Dung put on clothing from Abenian's closet. Abooksigun studied the map for a while. "Okay, the rest of you stay here and stay out of sight while me and Dung look around. Dung, I will be your slave, and you will be my master." Dung laughed. "Okay, Katie's, pick that cotton." Abooksigun smiled. "You got jokes, Dung got serious as they walked to Manorville. "Nah, just kidding, but I understand we have been together all this time, and Sabaoth has worked miracles for us. People are sick, and the demons run them like puppets. The Jews were chosen, but Mshika came to save all. My father once said, 'Which ones are from the tribe of Judah?' Because there were 12 children of Israel, and Esau had that many as well, and their descendants count for something." Dung paused for a second. "Most people want to be number one in everything. They can't stand to be second or third. I understand why they hate your people. I just disagree. Many people think when someone uses the term melanated people, they believe that it is used to refer to some kind of racial superiority between non-melanated people when it's not. One thing I know is that Sabaoth chose me, and that's all that matters to me. For centuries they have corrupted things meant for good and made them evil, like the swastika. Initially, it meant well-being, prosperity, or good fortune. Hindu philosophy, for instance, represents various things that come in fours. In Japanese Buddhism, also known as the manji, the emblem signifies the Buddha's footsteps. In India, it's a symbol of the sun god. To the Jains, their spiritual teachers. It is displayed at weddings and other festive occasions to consecrate a new home, but out of all the things, whether I agree with them or not, it never represented hatred. Dung was interrupted by Abooksigun. "I agree wholeheartedly, but it's time to get into character." The smell was worse than that of the ghetto, and the sight tugged at Abooksigun's heart unlike never before. The people were all malnutrition and frail, and they stared at them but did not say a word. "They fear your presence," Abooksigun whispered to Dung. Dung smiled at the people. "Hello?" The people fell to the ground with their heads bowed. Dung grabbed one of the men and helped him up as the man trembled in fear. Dung said, "No, don't do that. The man spoke, and Dung looked at Abooksigun because the language was foreign to him. Abooksigun interpreted, he said. Please master, don't take my life. I have a wife and kids. Dung was upset, looking at the fear in the man's eyes, and could not say a word, so Abooksigun asked the man. What is your name, and why do you fear this man? The man looked at Dung, asking for permission to speak. Abooksigun repeated what the man said, Dung shaking his head with tears in his eyes, and the man said, My name is Requiem, He paused and then asked, Why is master crying? Abooksigun smiled, He's my brother and doesn't like what he sees. Having a puzzled look on his face, Requiem said, Brother? Abooksigun shook his head, This is my brother, and we are looking for the TWA people of Ireland. Requiem looked around and shouted, Shernit. Shernit had a disgusted look on his face as if saying, Why are you calling me? I want nothing to do with whatever is happening here. But when he saw Dung look his way, Shernit walked toward them and bowed. Abooksigun told Shernit to get up as Requiem asked him, These two are brothers, and they are looking for the TWA tribe from Ireland. Shernit scratched his head, Brothers? Abooksigun said, Yes, we are called mestizos where we are from. Computans, Anakitas, and Wakatilians, living as one people. Can you tell me where the people of Ireland are? He pointed northeast, Riverhead, 7 hours away. Shernit showed less fear than Requiem, and Abooksigun asked, How long have you been here? Shernit hesitated, 6 years. Abooksigun asked, Why are you not in the ghetto instead of here? Shernit paused again, They say I'm a fool, and the only thing I'm good for is sex. Confused, Abooksigun asks, If they think you are a fool, why would they have you making babies? Shernit, with a sad face, said, No, I'm the sex toy. Abooksigun conscience fall. He translated to Dung, and Shernit asked, How is it you speak our language? Requiem is Nigerian, and you speak to us with such a perfect and precise dialect? Abooksigun smiled, I will explain it all later. Please continue. Shernit continued, They hired desperate Anakitas and made them rich beyond their wildest dreams using old rusty naval ships by collecting what they call indentured servants. They lied to many of us and asked them to pay the price of 1 year of servitude for freedom here in this country. It was very lucratively, and the cost increased every year as these immigrants rushed to get out of the country they were from with no chance of freedom. The first so-called servants were just a few hundred Wakatilians from Brazil, Haiti, Colombia, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Argentina, and Grenada. Hell, the entire world, promising to send for their relatives afterward to do the same. They agreed to work in hopes of land and rights. Little did we know it was just empty promises and straight-up lies. Many of our people died long before their indentured service ended, and those who made it were denied their freedom. Like me, those who volunteered did so only because our future in our homeland would only be more poverty, disease, and oppression by the Computans and the Abenians. As these ships were docking, we discovered it was just another battle for survival. The land between Manorville to Riverhead is called the quarters, and the Anakitas who work these sections are called runners. A large group of greedy and heartless runners swarmed aboard the ship. Before it could even dock, grabbing us and forcing us to these tenements, charging an outrageous fee for their services. Some of them had to settle in the ports they arrived in, begging on every street corner where most of your people live. Our people suffer from all kinds of sickness and have to deal with premature deaths regularly, especially your people. 75% of infants die during birth. As Shernit spoke, a man came out of the house across the street, zipping up his pants, speaking French. He shouted at Dung, and Abooksigun, remaining in character, fell to the ground, and the rest of the people nearby. You must be new here because there cannot be any other reason you're speaking to my Katie. Get your ass out of here while you still can. Dung looked up and walked over to the man, punching him so hard it knocked him out, and looked at Abooksigun. What was he saying? Abooksigun laughed, Does it really matter? Dung opened the door where the French man exited and saw men, women, and children lying naked, and some were even tied up while men raped them. Dung walked into the house, killing every Anakataz inside, and freed the people. Abooksigun entered the building, and I thought the ghetto was bad. Abooksigun immediately called his men, guided them to their location, and ordered his 2 healers, Maven and Amarian, to heal the people. Black and Hound, you copy? Black and Hound responded, go ahead. Abooksigun thought before saying, make your way around the ghetto and head toward our location. Bring all the sky crafts and warriors to our location and be prepared for war. Black and Hound got excited at the sound of fighting and quickly said, 10-4. The French man woke up moments later, tied up, and shouted, who the fuck do you think you are? Abooksigun slapped the man, who do you think you are? The French looked at Abooksigun with outrage, Katie, you dare slap me? I am going to kill you. Abooksigun sat down in front of the man. I've always wondered why people say shit like that when they are in the worst predicament. Taking out his knife, he cut off the man's finger. Question, what will you say next? I'm curious. The man said nothing but looked at Abooksigun with anger in his eyes. Abooksigun slapped the man again as Shernet and Requiem looked on in disbelief. At the same time, he was waiting on Black and Hound to arrive. Dung and Abooksigun chain the man to a nearby pole and question the people as the man demands the slaves to release him, but they seem more afraid of Abooksigun and Dung than him. Dung asked, who is this man, and what is he to you all? Shernet, upset, it has almost been a year, and no one has left the quarters, and now we are being abused worse than before. An elderly lady approached, my name is Kitist. This here is Eve, the tyrant of Manorville. He owns everyone in Manorville and is the most feared man in the quarters and maybe the richest between here to Riverhead. Abooksigun asked, if given the opportunity, what would you do with him? And the people shouted, kill him. Dung shouted, then what are you waiting for? The people rushed Eve with axes, shovels, and picks and tore him to pieces. Abooksigun looked at Shernet, why haven't you attacked your oppressor? Shernet said, he's already dead. Dung became angry but said calmly, kill him or remain a slave for the rest of your life. Shernet approached Eve slowly and stabbed him in the chest and then his groin. He started crying and began to hack his body into pieces with anything he could find before falling to the ground and letting out a loud yell as he thought about the abuse Eve inflicted upon him. Abooksigun stood before the people as Black and Hound could be seen heading their way. After today, the quarters will no longer exist. My men are on their way. Those of you who will help me eliminate the rest of these Anakataz may fight with me, but the rest go with these men to T3 and live amongst us in peace. Black and Hound and all the warriors arrived, killing and rescuing the people of Manorville and Calverton. Finally arriving at Riverhead, Abooksigun did not want to see his kinsmen in their state but sent Dung and the rest of the men to get his people. A few women from Manorville and Calverton remained behind and prepared meals for the men as they went off to battle the Anakataz. Abooksigun sat on the ground and ate when he saw Dung returning. Dung approached Abooksigun, the people refused to leave even after we told them that they were freed. They say, they are waiting for Sabaoth to deliver them, and my words do not affect them. Infuriated, Abooksigun stood up, have the men forcibly take them all to one location, and I'll be there in a few minutes. The sun rose, and Abooksigun walked in front of the people. My people fear for their lives and wait on Sabaoth to rescue them when their salvation was sent to them hours ago. Saying you will wait on Sabaoth, how is it you don't know it was Sabaoth that recused you hours ago? I want to tell you a story. A brave young lady was proud of her family and always wanted the best for her kinsman not too long ago. A king wanted to wed her, but she refused because he was an evil king, and she rejected the king's advances. He slowly changed and tried again, but the lady tried to see if the king had changed his ways. This lady eventually married the king and had a daughter as time passed. The king wanted a son to take over his kingdom when he died, but they never had another child, and he never had any more children. Depressed and angry over his situation, he returned to his whoremongering ways and forgot about his queen. The people, the Computans, and the Abenians rejected the queen because she was Wakatilian, and he was Anakitas with Computans' privileges. Once the Abenians discovered what the king had done, they cut him and his people off from the advances and technology they offered. The people became furious at the king and rioted in the city. Before the lady married the king, she was about to marry another man, and once the people and Abenians saw the king's wife, that man and even her greedy uncle betrayed the lady. The people turned against her, and they all created lies about her, and she was executed. The queen's child was sent to Arizona, but the king and the people were told that the child had been assassinated. Raised in Arizona her entire life, she became a great warrior. Meanwhile, Sabaoth raised a young man from Louisiana, and he was given gifts and powers no man on earth has ever possessed, and told him to make his way to Arizona. As a lone warrior, he quickly trained others, and Sabaoth granted him and all that followed him and believed in Sabaoth various special gifts just like him. Before he made it to Arizona, he had a powerful army that destroyed the Abenians and everything they touched. That queen was my grandmother, Queen Anaya of Ireland. The people began to murmur amongst themselves as Abooksigun continued. Her child is my mother, also named Anaya, and that warrior is my father, Wanyenyekevu. We are Computans, Anakitas, and Wakatilians that live amongst each other in peace and harmony and are called mestizos in Arizona. I was sent here to do the same for you. Choose your eldest and wisest to see a silver coin proving that my grandmother is Queen Anaya of Ireland. And my men, the Dirty 30, will prove that Sabaoth has given us great power so we can go home. I'm not fighting for people who are ungrateful and stubborn. 5 elders walked up. The coin is authentic, one of the elders shouted. The people were in awe as the Dirty 30 demonstrated their powers. Then Abooksigun quickly said, on our way to T3, you see the bodies of your oppressors and see how Sabaoth has treated your oppressors. Now, get y'all stubborn, holier than thou asses on one of those sky crafts, or stay your ass here cause we're outta here. As they transported the people to T3, many warriors scavenged the dead in the 3 towns. Abooksigun and Dung were the last to return home. Hesitant and sleepy, Abooksigun took a shower and watched the blood flowing down the drain, and he looked up toward heaven. Lord, I found what I was looking for, the missing piece. I found my heart. Thank you. After 2 weeks separating the believers from the non-believers, issuing weapons and Torahs, they began the holy jeûne for enlightenment, and Abooksigun taught them martial arts. Silence is important, which is why martial artists, priests, prophets, and most wise men and women in ancient times practiced meditation. Everything has a voice, even silence. To hear, you have to listen beneath the sound. You gotta listen to the trees hiss. You gotta listen to the wind. So, we must fast and meditate to Sabaoth daily. This is a mixture of African, Asian, and Native American martial art handed down from generation to generation in my family called poing or hands. Later it was renamed poing de Dieu or hands of God. Using styles like Kumjuka, Okichita, tomahawk fighting, Falamakai, and Chulukwariu, incorporating them with the African art of fighting, work together as one force. We call the 7 grandfathers, Nibwakuin, Zagiiduin, Minadendamoan, Akoduin, Guayaquadizuin, Dabadendizuin, and Debwin, which are wisdom, love, respect, bravery, humility, and truth. Wisdom, to cherish knowledge, is to know wisdom. Wisdom is given by the Creator for the people's good. Love is the ability to know peace as love, and this love must be unconditional. Respect is to honor all creation. Therefore, to respect it. All creation, big or small, must be treated with respect. You must give respect if you wish to be respected. Bravery is to face the foe with integrity. Honesty in facing a situation is to be brave. Always be honest in words and actions. Being honest with yourself makes it easy to be honest with others. Humility is knowing yourself as a sacred part of creation. And last, truth. Truth is to know these things. Speak the truth, so you do not deceive yourself or others. Some of these techniques are literally out of this world sent by Sabaoth, and once you learn the entire style, it is called Poing de Dieu or Hands of God. We use weapons such as Isilangu, Assegai, and shurikens or stars. We will teach you those as we continue to learn and educate you, but first, we need you to learn with what we are born with, our hands and feet. These moves and techniques can be shown in what we call a kata or a dance. The kata combines all our movements. As you learn, your kata becomes more intense. You will learn to create your own moves and styles until you become a master by using stances and preparatory positions, kicking, striking, and blocking techniques. Abooksigun stood at attention and bowed as he continued with Dung by his side and Bobo lying behind them. One bow to show respect to his opponent. Your stances or tachi waza, which are many. Abooksigun stood with his arms tucked to his side and quickly performed a stance. This is Hisakudachi, a formal attention. Stance. Feet are at a 45 angle. He shouted, Musubidachi. This is an informal attention stance, and he moved quickly yet gracefully changed his position. This is a parallel attention stance, called Hikodachi and. He shouted, changing his position once again. Hachijidachi. An outward feet stance. Abooksigun showed the people the moves as he and Dung walked gracefully through the movements. And then, the people tried them themselves, and the two young men, along with the Dirty 30, helped them find their center of gravity and corrected them as they learned. Hours later, Abooksigun said, now, your blocking techniques or yukwaza can be used with arms or legs. Using the arms. He quickly raised his left arm, bent at a 45-degree angle, yuk or rising block, thrusting his arm down, yuk, elbow block. He continued to move around, calling out positions. Gedden barai, sweeping low block. Sweating profusely, he had just caught his second wind. Blocking with your legs, Ashikubi cake yuk or hooking ankle block, Mikazuki jerry yuk, crescent kick block, Nami ashi, leg snapping wave block. Everyone gathered around in a circle. I would be lying to you if I said how the Zulu tradition came to be in our fighting style, but my family is rich in history. I started learning martial arts at 5 years old. I saw my family doing it and wanted to learn it myself. I recall a book, Black Jews in Africa and the Americas, in where many British historians and Bible scholars considered the Zulus' customs were of Jewish origin and that the Zulus themselves are Jewish. They believe their traditions in circumcision, liberate marriage, touching the dead, rules regarding chastity, the rejection of swine's flesh, polygamy, marriage customs, and the festival of the first fruits. The Zulus' religious and social customs, war offerings, sin offerings, propitiatory offerings, and periods of uncleanness reflect an Israelite past. They even observe the new moons as the Old Hebrews. Some described their religious beliefs were also considered pre-Christian Judaism. Since this planet has existed, we have had some people who lived where they were born until death. Some people have traveled away from their homeland or country for better living conditions like many of you have. Granted, some of you were tricked, but there's a reason why you are here today. We all know that Jacob's 12 sons became the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel, and we know that a shortage of food later forced the Israelites to leave Canaan. Many of them, we don't know if all, moved to Egypt. The Pharaoh enslaved them. How many escaped before, during this enslavement? We know Nebuchadnezzar too carried the inhabitants of Jerusalem and other Judean cities captive to Babylon. How many escaped before and during this time? One thing is for certain, not all returned to their homeland. Let's just say that an estimated 25% of the population had been deported to Babylon, with the remaining 75% staying in Judah. How many escaped before or during this transition? Basically, what I'm saying, you see, the language and traditions of many of the children of Israel are all around the world and here on this continent as well. Abooksigun called all of them together in a circle and stood in the midst of them. How many of you know that the dark-skinned Native or indigenous Americans you called Indians for centuries were reclassified as Wakatilians? Many were given an ultimatum to stay on the reservation or be classified as Wakatilians. Many of them had various dialects of Hebrew, and they were undoubtedly descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. All these lies and more were used to keep us ignorant of the truth of our identity. Many of the towns and cities in the Americas were villages of the original indigenous people. St. Louis used to be called Cahokia and was one of the largest cities north of Mexico. These same Wakatilians of old created sports such as basketball, soccer, and lacrosse. Frustrated with the European invasion, many moved back to some of their ancestral lands in Mexico, Central and Southern America. Please do your research on the many things that the Europeans did to our people and because of our people. Look up terms like warriors on water. Some would use the term thugs on water interchangeably. Before I end, remember this: stay humble. The Torah tells us for those who think they are so spiritual and act as if they are Sabaoth's only righteous, if they were to keep silent, the stones would cry out and worship him. Anyways, we call this circle in the Zulu tongue Kumbi, and the plural form is Ikumbi. However, in Native America, it represents or symbolizes the four directions. Think of it as a compass that symbolizes what is needed during a conflict or what we use when challenging an attack. He pointed toward the east. The east represents balance, confidence, and creativity. In battle, the east influences the identification or location of an adversary. Therefore, you're setting up and developing a solid attack position. We employ these techniques with energy, movement, and commitment. Then he pointed toward the south. The south represents strength, focus, and success. So, in battle, the south influences an opponent's brave, aggressive challenge. Therefore, this technique effectively controls the adversary. Then he pointed toward the north. The north represents courage, energy, and knowledge. In battle, the north influences the control of an opponent with surprise or overwhelming force before finally being taken down. He finished up by pointing toward the west. The west represents challenge, choice, and proof. In battle, the west influences the takedown and finishes an opponent before moving on to the next adversary. We execute all techniques in an environment of the highest respect and restraint. Remember this. Abooksigun shouted, "East," as the group yelled back, "Balance, confidence, and creativity." The east influences the identification or location of an adversary by setting up and developing a solid attack position. Employed with energy, movement, and commitment. Abooksigun shouted, "South." The group called back, represents strength, focus, and success. The south influences an opponent's brave, aggressive challenge. This technique effectively controls the adversary. Abooksigun shouted, "North." The group called out, represents courage, energy, and knowledge. The north influences the control of an opponent with surprise or overwhelming force, before finally being taken down. Abooksigun shouted, "West," as the group shouted. The west represents a challenge, choice, and proof. The west influences the takedown and finishes your opponent before moving on to the next adversary. Abooksigun shouted, and the group repeated after him. We executed all techniques in an environment of the highest respect and restraint. They repeated this over and over until everyone had it memorized. Abooksigun continues, "Inside this circle, it is not a time for fun and games when we are in an Kumbi. It is to discuss serious matters, and it is when you come together to discuss your weakness before Jun, only if you want to. Your fasting is not to men, nor for men. It's for yourself to surrender to Sabaoth. If you discuss a matter, it is for your help or to see if someone else has the same problems, so you can work on it together to defeat it. What we say here is to stay here, never to be discussed with anyone. Not to a wife, a sister, or a brother. Okay, we need to know 2 more Zulu words for now. Impi, the plural form easy MPI. Now, Impi means battle formation. It is essential to stop everything and prepare for battle when you hear this word, he shouted, IWA. Looking at everyone's faces, the last Zulu word you need to know for now is IWA. It means war or fight. Hours turned into days and days into weeks, and after 6 months, the people could gracefully perform katas that lasted 20 minutes to an hour and were proficient in the art of war, point de Dieu.